Well, hello everybody, this is the Palmgren angle vise I picked up at auction for $20, which also included this Stanley 102 block plane. We are going to disassemble this thing, clean it up, and make a good tool out of it. Let's see, how am I going to go about this? I'll start by taking the brackets off the side. Everything is already loose. That's the way it came. So we've got a couple bolts here we need to get out, a couple more. Looks like there's washers behind those steel plates. Another couple of washers. I'm going to separate the top from the base if I can. Hopefully this pin just comes out. I'm going to shoot most of this in real time. That's just cast on cast, nothing there. So there's the base. Looking good. Let's see. It's nasty. It's stiff. Take this set screw out here, which should allow me to get this out. There we go. Let's see. Try to take this gib off the bottom here. Hopefully it's not too tight. No, they're not even really tight at all. Cool. Okay, there's a little, looks like a felt wiper. It goes towards the jaw end. Let's see if this comes out. Stiff. There we go. Okay. Try to pull this jaw off here. Yeah. That's cool. Nothing's really rusted up. It's just coming apart super easy. So there's that jaw. Flat ground. Easy enough. And it looks like the final piece is just this front jaw here. Hopefully it is equally as easy. So far so good. I can feel the crust, but it won't be like that when it goes back together. And there we go. So we'll start cleaning all these pieces up and move on. Alright guys, I've done some preliminary cleaning so I can kind of inspect things and see where I'm at with this. Basically the castings are everything. Went through a tub of gasoline and then came in, got rinsed off, and then purple power beyond that, about 50-50. To my surprise, it's still retaining some of its original paint. You can see it's not glossy now. That's a byproduct of using purple power or simple green sometimes. It will dull paints out. A little bit of wax would shine that back up. I don't believe I'm going to paint this, even though it would be a perfect candidate for it. I just simply don't want to take the time, so just use your imagination. It's going to look great. I'd mentioned it was stiff, and I know now why. See, this jaw does not really want to slide past this particular spot. Evidently something was dropped on it at one point in time, so it's binding up on the vise jaw there. A little bit of stoning, I'll take care of that. Other than that, those pieces are good. There is a little bit of rust remaining under here. I'll be taking care of that, as well as on these jaws, a little bit of rust in there. I'll show you the method I'm going to use. There's many different ways to do that. What I thought was a felt wiper, which was actually sitting right here when I started cleaning, was simply nothing more than 50 years of oil and chips that had solidified. There's no wiper on it. I thought these were steel. They were kind of heavy like steel, but they had so much grease and grime. These are actually aluminum stampings. No damage there. The lead screw, I've got one spot in the threads back here. I don't know if you can see it. That little shiny spot. I need to address that. This is cadmium plated, so it was probably used a special dye to turn it undersized, and the cadmium may have added a little bit. I may get in there with a hand restorer or maybe a thread chaser if I've got one. We'll take care of that. The only other thing really to note was a washer or two was kind of domed up from being tightened up a little bit too much. I'll put those in a flat-jawed vise, smooth-jawed vise, and flatten them out, or maybe even use my arbor press. At this stage, all these steel components are going to go into a bath of Purple Power 50/50 through the ultrasonic cleaner, and then I'll do some wire brushing and stuff on those. But that's where we're at. Alright, well, I'm going to start taking care of this base here, and I'm just simply using straight phosphoric acid on a Q-tip. Should probably wear gloves for stuff like this, but you know, I like living on the edge. So I'm just going to put it on there and let it do its thing. It may take a couple applications, but it will eat that rust or any residual rust straight out of there. It will dull the casting, so I'll need to kind of brighten it back up with a Scotch-Brite pad or maybe a soft wire wheel. I don't have a Scotch-Brite wheel yet for my bench grinder. It's been on my list for years, just never got around to it. So that's basically the principle. Maybe you can see it changing already. It won't take all the staining out, but it'll definitely kill the rust, and it will look a lot more presentable in my opinion. I'll show you the end results here momentarily. Alright, I've done 2 applications, and you can see how it's looking right now. I switched over to an acid brush so I could apply it a little more quickly, but just to give you an example, after it gets so far, you'll see it start bubbling up here. It's killing stuff right now. So I only leave this on for about a minute, and then I rinse it, dry it, and then come back, inspect it, and do another coat if I think I need to. But you do not want to let this stuff dry. You might, if you do accidentally do that, you might try to reactivate it with some more acid and then wash it off. Just a demonstration here. So I'll let this sit for about another minute, rinse it, and that should be it. Alright, well, I've done all I'm going to do with that. You can see here in just a few seconds on the wire brush here, it's turned it into that right there. A little bit of word on what I'm using here. This is just a 1725 motor with a fine bristle brush on it with an arbor shaft adapter. I like this slow speed stuff because I can work close up to it and even touch the bristles, and if you stay there too long it'll burn your fingers off. But it's pointed down the wall. There's no guard, so any stray strands that come off, nobody's in here but me. Got on my safety glasses, and I'll just give you a quick idea here on what it takes. Very little, and I'm just lightly touching it. And you can see how good it's looking right there. Just to show you how quick and easy it is. You can do it with a Scotch-Brite pad as well by hand, but I'll clean it up this way, and I might even hit it with a Scotch-Brite pad. And I'll spend another minute or so on it just to make sure everything's even. Alright, I've just been cleaning up this hardware on this slow-speed wire wheel. I just wanted to really illustrate why I do like this. I've got another one here. Just flip it on. I can work really close to it. I don't have to hold things with pliers. I maintain control. They're not zinging all over the shop. I'm actually touching it with my fingers. You can't linger too long or you will end up burning your skin, but you can see I'm able to get in here and do the threads like so. I'm just doing this one real quick just to show you what you can do. Get the end of it, maintain control there, clean up the threads here. Give it once around this way. And just like that, there you go. Very handy thing to use. 1725 RPMs, fine wire wheel. Alright, well I'm still kind of going through things, cleaning things up. I'm actually now chasing threads. I'm not using a tap. I've said this before, this is a thread chaser, maybe you call it a thread restorer. They don't necessarily cut, but they'll clean and they'll restore ones that are damaged. So just taking them simply and running in every hole, cleaning out any grime that might still be in there. I use these wherever I can in lieu of a tap. If I have to use a tap, I will do that, but a tap usually will go ahead and still create or cut extra threads. So I've got everything out here for everything I need, just simply running things in. I've already done this one. So that one's a little crusty. You know, and I usually, if I'm just cleaning them out, I don't use any lubrication. I just do it dry. Can't really see it, but it did clean that up. Let's check it here just to make sure. Yep. Doesn't get any better than that. This is the one I am going to use a little lubrication on. I'd mentioned earlier about cadmium plating, maybe this being turned or cut undersize. I don't think cadmium would do that, but certainly nickel or chrome would. Cadmium's probably pretty thin. So once I get this up to that particular spot, I'll work it back and forth, putting a little bit of cutting oil on it, and I'm going to try to fix that little hickey right there. It's hard to see. Trying to do things quick here to save some time. See, I'm getting pretty close. Just going to see what it feels like on camera. Yeah, you hear that crunchy? It's doing it. I may not have to use anything else, but I'll work that. Well, I believe I got it right there. So I'll test it in the screw right here and make sure everything's looking good. Alright, well I chased the threads on that and I went ahead and chased the ones inside here. It cleaned it up pretty good. Right there it is. Just making sure it goes in all the way smooth. No binding, no nothing. And there's not any lubrication on these yet either. So that is looking good right there. Alright guys, well I stoned down those sections where something evidently had hit this at one point. You can see it right there in front of my thumb. There was another one on this side right there in front of my thumb. So now the movable jaw slides nice and freely just like it's supposed to. I did finish the movable jaw. You can see hopefully the difference now. This was just straight cleaning. This was after the rest of the treatments. You can see from the side here how good it's looking compared to what this does. Quick rundown on what I did here. Simply hit it with the wire brush first, cleaned it. Couple applications of the phosphoric acid, rinsed it, then back to the wire wheel. Cleaned it one last time. Actually used a little bit of Brasso on it, of all things, on a rag. Buffed it up a little bit. A final degreasing in Purple Power 50/50, and there you go. I'm going to do the exact same treatment on the base. Take a good look there. I'll show the end results once I'm finished with it. Alright, well here's a quick shot of the base. Looking pretty good if you ask me. Alright, I've got all the hardware cleaned up as well as addressed the jaws here. There were some dings and bumps and high spots and stuff, so I just took a little stone and cleaned those up. So these are now ready to go. Alright guys, I can't do it. I just stuck it together last night before I went to bed real quick, looked at it, slept on it all night. I can't do it. I can't do it. It's got to have a paint job. I was trying to avoid it, but I can't do things halfway. So this is going to cost me another few hours in this project, as small as this thing is. There's a lot of masking that has to go on here. When these things are made originally, they're rough cast, they may be cleaned up a little bit, but then they're painted. Then they take them for the final machining operation. Much easier to do it that way than try to machine all your parts and then mask things off and then paint it. So the restorers are at a disadvantage in that when you're doing things. So it's got to be painted. Alright, anyway, I did discover another problem. That hickey that was down here on this screw, apparently that was from a fall or something like that, because when I mocked it up, it's going to be squeaky. But right around in here, it started getting really hard to turn. You can see it's really easy now. That screw was bent a little bit. So the only thing I did was I started going in and sighting a line and watching and waiting until that started moving. And then I found the high spot, a couple light love taps here, and now it's good to go. It's not quite perfect, but good enough for this application. So now I get to take it apart and start preparing everything for the paint job. Of course, it's raining outside now, which is where I paint, so humidity is a little bit high. I'll find a spot in between the raindrops and I'll bring it in the shop to cure. Alright guys, well I'm going to do a little experiment here. Normally when I mask stuff like this off, I'd use like a blue painter's tape or something like that. Come back in with an X-Acto knife and try to cut around the castings. I'm actually going to give this a go. This is about the cheapest clear packing tape you can get. So I've got this side already done. I'm working on this side, and I'm just taking a small needle file and just working that edge down like this, and it just cuts right through it. See? Then I'll make sure I don't have any residuals hanging over. I'm going to give this a go and see how this works for a mask. Seems to be really easy to do. Alright, well the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and shoot this scale and the writing here with some black paint. And then I'm going to take some lacquer thinner and carefully clean that off to darken up these lines. The stamping's down here underneath where it says Chicago. They're not really that deep, so that'll probably just mostly come off. I've also masked this little section right here, left it open so I could do the 0 witness mark. Alright, well I'm having trouble getting a shot of this because of all the glare, but I got that dusted with the black paint. Hopefully you can see it showing up quite a bit better. And then the 0, it may be hard to see as well. Can't really see it too well, but definitely easier to read. Alright, well I've got everything in primer here. Just a few light coats. I'm actually using this Duplicolor Automotive Self-Etching Primer. Had it on hand. I'm kind of torn here. I've got these two colors. I've got this Ace, which is a machinery gray, That's my preferred color, but I'm getting thin on my can. I may be able to pull it off. Or this Van Sickle Gloss Dark Ford Gray. Don't really care for that color, but I've got almost a full can here. Pretty sure I bought this a while back to test the color years ago and ended up going with this. So I think I'm going to go ahead and try to stretch the paint out. Hopefully I can make it with this can, or I'll have to go get another one. Alright, well, I put my last coat on about an hour or so ago. Turned out pretty good. Got a little piece of trash right there. Nothing I can do about that now. This really isn't the right type of paint to use for this as far as durability. I could try baking it, but I'm not going to. I really need to let these sit till tomorrow, but I'm impatient. I always am when it comes to taking the mask off these. So I'm going to try to get them undressed, and I'll show a quick shot of that. Well, alright guys, I got all that masking film off. I just wanted to make a note. I didn't just come in here and start ripping it off, because obviously I had a bridge of paint between the tape and the part itself. So same principle. I came in with this little needle file, drawing it this time, drawing away from the painted edge, and just broke that line. In tighter areas, whatnot, maybe an X-Acto knife. I had very little bleed through underneath the tape. I am going to try a little bit thicker of a film mil spec on that tape next time. Going on, burnishing it out, that was all fine, but getting it off, it was so cheap. In places it would come off in slivers, so I had to spend a lot of time digging little pieces up. So I will try a thicker one. It may be harder to burnish through it originally, but look at the lines on this thing. I'm just taken back how crisp and clean they are. You'd swear this thing was painted and then it was ground. Unbelievable how tight that is. I've never had anything turn out like that before. Here's a quick shot of this particular piece right here. Again, just super crisp lines. Totally stoked with that. Alright guys, well, I've just mocked it up. I'm going to have to take it apart and oil everything, but I get excited when I'm doing something like this because, like a lot of you guys, I love seeing the transformation and taking something that is just nasty that most people would discard, put a little bit of love into it, work some things over, and turn it into something that is good looking and functional. I know a lot of you guys like restoring things. A lot of you just like watching people restore things. Those of you that watch my channel that don't do either of those things, get into it. It's really rewarding. Once you can kind of look past rust and grime and get your techniques down, you too can take some of these things that don't cost much money and turn it into a really nice piece for yourself to use, or fix it up and sell it, your choice. I put this white paper down because in the last clip it appeared that it had like a tint of green on it, that it looked like it was green. It's not, it's machine gray. I think it's the yellow bouncing off of my workbench. So here's kind of the shot of it, mocked up. Looking pretty good if you ask me. I'll try to turn it around. Let's give you a shot of the other side. And that's it, guys. Like I said, I'll give it a light coat of oil once it cures out for a couple days, and to work it goes. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and good luck.